Season 1, Episode 6. When These Walls Come Tumbling Down. Final episode of Arc 2. And I forgot to say thank you to Eclectic Oak on camera last time. So I have to remember to do that. Oil and chemicals in the water during the opening shot. Much more obvious than it was shown earlier. A few episodes ago. And we also see that there's quite a few people who are quite a bit damaged, quite a bit down low. And Victor himself has had his limp ever since he was a child. What's really disturbing to me the most about that limp is I've seen that limp before in real life because I've had that limp. A different leg. It's actually my left leg. But I have walked exactly like that in the wake of my accident. It's interesting. I had to do a fairly large amount of physical therapy to get back to being able to walk normally again. Of course, Victor does not have that opportunity. They never say exactly what he has, and it doesn't really matter. What matters is that Valerian is trying desperately to make sure you never see my face again. It could be polio. It could be stunted growth. It could be a form of cancer. It could be magic cancer. That's a thing in several settings. A surprisingly large number of settings have that thing where magic can grow inside the body biologically, and that can cause issues. And, well, we happen to know for total certainty, congratulations, Jazz, you're now Swedish, that there is at least a little bit of magical runover in this city, especially nowadays. Might not have been back in the day. Who knows? But either way, it doesn't really matter because all this is just speculation. All we know is he was born this way. It's entirely possible that the pollution had nothing to do with anything. Like, I know that sounds horrible, but it's possible that he literally just was born that way. That's a thing that happens. How many was that? 20? Jesus Christ, Valerian. Young Victor has clockwork invention. We see the doctor from earlier. Still don't actually have a name for him. And a salamander thing. That could be Mad Overlord. That's entirely possible. I'm still workshopping a word that isn't dark or mature, because I really do think both don't work. We'll have to turn things around at some point. Yeah, Jace thinks it's the fissures. It could be. It could not be. It could be a combination thing. Who knows? Possibilities. We could call it Andor. What's this? Oh, it's a very Andor work. This game is very Andor. We can be loners together is certainly an interesting phrase. A lot of good transitions in this episode. Camera kind of pans up. We see the water runoff going down to the lowest city. Good? Doesn't work, though. It's not indicative. Doesn't have anything to do with the topic at hand. It's like calling it pumpernickel. The water runoff down and below is running off from the water above, which is running off from the water above, which we don't even see where that water originates. And a nice transition up there to, you know, to current day Victor is being visited by Heimerdinger. Seems like just yesterday, a nice, interesting little time variance thing going on there. And, of course, Heimerdinger is, of course, stealing my terminology as usual, ruminating in the Steel Oasis. There's this really interesting question. Victor asks him, "Do you contemplate death, Professor?" And Heimerdinger's response is, "Only that of friends." We also confirm that Heimerdinger is one of Piltover's founders. I've actually theorized a few times about the exact percentage of exactly how much time he has spent in charge of the city. Well, there it is. 100% of it. Yeah, he's very Yoda. And he definitely has... I don't like using this word because it's a bit misused, but he is very much privileged here. Not just by his position and his status, but by his literal lifespan. He doesn't quite understand what it's like to have a shorter lifespan. Like, he literally doesn't get it. He doesn't process it. There's this bit where Victor talks about, oh man, you know, at some point I'm going to fade even from your memory. And the only response he can give is, well, you know, the best are doomed to burn brightest. And it's like, what? it's that's that's not really comforting. And it does make sense. It's one of those interesting and fascinating things I myself have posited and preached, the idea of taking the long-term view often. It took years, actually, for me to understand that you also have to keep in mind the short term. That if you plan for just the long term, you're going to cut yourself off now and not get to the long term. But if all you think about is the short term, then there'll be no long term either, just a mess. Both effects are wrong. Oh, and I noticed the butterfly, of course. Yeah, my contributions will be short-lived, even in your memory. Yeah, what's a butterfly's life to ours? Literally yesterday, my niece was worried about a fly that was buzzing around. And I told her, don't worry. If it takes us too long to kill it, it'll just die of old age in a few days. Yeah, no kidding, Lord Aramon. One moment, please. Really wish I'd stop getting the spam. A USPS package has been arrived at the warehouse and cannot be delivered. Uh-huh, sure it has. Yeah, no, it's just spam. It's just phishing attempts. There's a lot of those. We need to criminalize that more, if I might be so bold. Obvious aggravation in Mel's movements as she's listening, as she's painting her painting. But the moment Jace shows up and shares the reality of it, she actually pauses. In fact, she physically jolts when she hears it. Her movement, her body language changes completely, and she actually goes down and sits right next to Jace. It's interesting because I still get the very strong feeling that she doesn't quite care for him. But it's more like she doesn't not care about him, as absolutely bizarre as that sounds. A lot of her body language gets across the idea that she's weirded out by how affectionate that Jace is being around and towards her. Yeah, there's definitely at least a capacity for companionship there. But it's just... Yeah, exactly. She has basic compassion. She has the ability to process this. And yeah, she actually says, why do you tell me... Yeah, why do you tell me this? Why am I the one you're telling about this? And his response is, well, you know, I feel better with you. And then she's just like, huh. There's also this wonderful bit. Jace is having issues, obviously. He theorizes, that's what we just talked about, he theorizes that Victor's health is caused by people in the trenches, but it doesn't matter if it is or not, because there are still people down there who are still suffering, and saving those lives is the whole point. And then he talks about Victor and how he saved my life once, emphasis on the bracelet. Also the double meaning of the mage who saved his life. I hate feeling so useless. And yeah, I think for a cold fish like Mel, she's just not used to someone being honest, sincere, open, whatever word you want to use there. You'll also notice that Mel, in addition to, you know, going ahead and letting him let Ray lay his head in her lap, also decides to respond honestly. That she admits a truth that she hasn't told many people about her family, about how she is an outcast from her family. Just a nice little tidbit there. It's funny, because these two's relationship, if you can call it that, began with them having sex. Well, it began with her manipulating him. But again, the fact that it's developing at all past that point is fascinating. It makes you wonder, like, this could actually turn into something real, which could be really good for her long term. Because she's probably never had someone real in her life. Ever. Meanwhile, we have this wonderful juxtaposition here. The painting is this big shot of sailing vessels, and I'm sure it has some significance, but I can't help but pointing out the symbolism of it being a vision of the past. And as they're staring at it, it transitions to Victor staring at the core, which just literally shows him a vision of the future. Victor, in what can only be referred to as desperation, reaches out to it. And honestly, in most stories, this is where the supervillain gains superpowers and starts to be a problem. This then that cuts to Jinx. Jinx goes and tries to talk about what's going on with one of the person. Basically interrogates the guy at the bar. You know, one of the things that irritates me the most? It's when people compare Kefka to the Joker. And that always irritates me. So I'm not going to compare Jinx to the Joker. Anyways, so moving on from this scene. We see that she's really... we see that Vi really pushed herself really hard in the fight with Twitface, which actually makes perfect sense. Because she had something pushing her, right? She had to push because she was still pushing for powder. I'm kind of joking, but I'm mostly not. I'll come back to the Joker thing in a second, for real. Because I will. There isn't a real comparison to be made there. I'll even bring up Kefka if you want me to, because I can analyze him while we're at it. I got that. See, the thing is, ironically, I don't see Harley Quinn here at all. But again, we'll come back to that. Or the opposite of that. Sorry. But again, stop talking about it. I'm getting too ahead of myself. I want to do this in order. Damn it! Stop cutting ahead in the script. You're throwing me. So Firelight sees Vi going down, and we also see we see that Vi has already functionally started doing... What do you think about the flare scene? Ah! We see that Vi is still pushing herself, but barely, right? We also see that she's only managing it with Caitlyn's help. In fact, in several things, she literally has to lean on Caitlyn. We also see that everyone thinks that she's gotten away scot-clean. So that immediately leads to Twitface, never gonna name her, smashing her way in and saying, you know, she got away. Who's her? Notice the competency on display here, because one of the first things that happens is Twitface is like, you! Rushes forward, which immediately hits the trap, which immediately sets off the gas, and Jinx had the gas mask right there ready to go and was just prepped for it. This scene is probably the most jokery of all of the scenes that she's been doing so far. And I really don't actually mean that as a negative thing, in any sense of the word. The comparisons here are fascinating because the problem is the Joker, and I've said this before, okay, obviously the problem is there is no character like the Joker. There is no such character. There are like 15 characters that all happen to use the name Joker. You know, the recent... Oh, God, what's his freaking name? The recent Joker, which is, like, much more realistic and gritty one. There's a sequel coming out soon. I can't think of his name. But anyways, there's that Joker. We've got the Heath Ledger Joker. We've got the Mark Hamill Joker. We've got several different versions of the comic Jokers. Joaquin Phoenix, that's it. Like, we have so many different Jokers. It's one of the reasons why I dislike calling somebody Joker characters, because while we can think of a general archetype when it comes to that, the specifics and nuances vary substantially. What really struck me here was most of the really well-written Jokers are not insane. That's important. I know that sounds so strange, but it's true. The Joker is literally someone, at least when he's well-written, or certain types of them are well-written, is someone who is very crazy, who's willing to push himself way above and beyond what anything else is, to the point where he can seem like he's insane, but all his insanity, that's him playing a role. He thinks that's funny. That's part of the joke. That's part of what's... Yeah, Heath Ledger Joker is a perfect example of this. That was a careful, cunning, crafted individual who is playing a role constantly and very, very rarely actually let down that mask. So I bring that up because Jinx is insane. She sees visions. She has flashes and elusive moments and legitimate logical disconnects. The only time Jinx is in control is when she's making her devices, which I think is just what Bionic Punk just said in chat. This is a little bit more like Kefka, actually. Kefka, especially when he's properly presented, is someone who is actually broken. But Kefka isn't even still at this particular level. Kefka doesn't see things, doesn't hallucinate, doesn't have mental disconnects with his emotions and his personality. Kefka feels nothing and hates it. And that's like the driving point of his character. So that's not it either. So she's not the Joker. She's not Kefka. This is when we can bring up Harley Quinn, because Harley Quinn is much more insane than the Joker is in most of her presentations. Someone who is legitimately deranged and diseased medically, intellectually, like she is insane. Someone who actually needs someone to sit down and give her honest-to-God psychiatric help, assuming such a thing is even possible in the dystopian hellscape that is Gotham. But even that feels like more of a surface-level comparison. Because at the end of the day, Jinx, what she reminds me of most of, and only like 2 of you are going to get this in chat, is Dr. Wily. The way I wrote him, in one of the only books I've ever written, where Dr. Wily has actual legitimate delusions and hallucinations and things that he sees and can't interact with and can't process unless he's building. The direct, fine, lore, Dr. Wily. The direct comparison was so immediate that it was the first thing that occurred to me immediately. Like, it's kind of crazy how one-to-one it is. Yeah, I know Evo's actually read that book. There's such a logic disconnect in the way she acts, because while she has things like goals, none of the rest of it is functional. None of the rest of it makes sense. If you look at Jinx and how she does things, other than her general goal of what's going on, and then find out if Vi is a thing or not, that's it. Like, that's the full totality of anything that approaches logic that she does. Everything else is to the moment, and in many cases contradicts other things that she's doing. Again, literally illogical. I know we watch Star Trek, at least some of us do, and we look at things like, you're illogical. No, actual illogical. Actual disconnect. Things that just do not make sense. It's actually pretty hard to read, to write that kind of a thing, and they do a good job with Jinx with this. So, she does a very... Yeah, she also has legitimate paranoia, just like Wily did. Remember that bit where... You probably haven't even gotten that far, Evo. Evo actually hasn't written all of the book. Where Wily actually goes to shoot one of his own creations because he thinks it's something coming to come kill him. And it takes him a moment to realize that something coming to come kill him wouldn't be cornering, huddling in the corner, crying. And then he has to pause and think for a second to process, did I already install an emotion chip in that thing? Like, it actually takes a moment for all this to process, because he is so disconnected. That's the word I like to use. That there's just wires that aren't plugged in properly in the brain. And so that's Jinx, right? Like, she's just wrong, but there's a weird inconsistency to how she's wrong. And yeah, she's been being raised functionally by Silco, who has probably not been helping with anything. We also know that she's terrifying. Like, again, she's crazy. There are several times where she gets so close to damages and or actual death that she probably should show some degree of fear. Like I know that sounds strange to say that, but even someone who is very, very competent or capable, if you have something, here, I'll use that stupid book, come flying at you like this, there's like an automatic flinch reaction because you're designed to survive, right? We have things, we have reactions, we have things like that, and Jinx is just barely even processes that it's there. And yeah, her lair reflects this. It's nothing but explosions in a giant abyss. If she trips at some point, she'll plummet to her death. And they've been doing a really good job with this in all 3 of these episodes, but I think this episode does the best job of really conveying this, especially in how she interacts with all these other people, now that she's talking to something other than her own head. Yeah, just a casual dodge thing over there. There's also this wonderful bit where Twitface, who knows, maybe someday she'll be a Lae'zel, actually tries to push at her to provoke a response. You're about as good for our cause as you were for your family. And of course, then Jinx sneezes. Did that actually have any effect? Did she actually process that in any way, shape, or form? Was she playing it off to try and make it look like it didn't hit her? We cut to Marcus in what I can only refer to as the most terrifying scene in the entire episode. Whole series so far, actually. Yeah, Marcus can't even stand to look at himself in the mirror. And then Savacom goes and, hang on, I don't have a weapon, Savacom. Hang on. There it is. I'm ready, Savacom. No, this scene is terrifying. I'm sorry. I cannot help but process how... It's such a cliched scene, but it doesn't... I do hit really hard, Savacom. It doesn't really... It doesn't have to be anything other than cliched, because it's really good. It's so quietly terrifying. It's also so indicative of how Silco is so good at playing the crime lord. I've said this before, he's not actually a crime lord. It's been a mask like this whole time. It's just this thing that he's trying to do. It's just this role that he's playing because he's all about the cause. He is diseased in the head, like legitimately. Like there's a disconnect there. He's not as far gone as Jinx, but in several ways he's actually more gone than Jinx. This man is a zealot. And so he plays the role of the simple thug by doing all the typical cliched things. Even the cigar was probably another part of that particular mask, if we're being honest. I don't think Silco actually enjoys cigars. I think that's just part of the role he's learned to play. So, Silco goes in, sneaks in with his thugs, and just sort of casually threatens to kill the man's daughter. Because someone failed him, right? That's what you do. Someone has failed me, so you have to escalate. Playbook. So, he talks him through it, and he's amiable, as he should be, but he finally gets to the point where he says, all right, what use are you? Actually, the exact phrasing he says is, then of what use are you? So he has pushed the argument onto Marcus. He's made it so Marcus now has to defend himself. So Marcus, who's processed this threat, says, I will fix this. At that point, Silco continues following the playbook. So first, we threaten, but then you offer the balm. We push it forward. Here we go. Here you go. Everyone makes mistakes. Oopsie. Interestingly enough, I have zero doubt that Silco would murder a child if he thought it would further his cause. But I don't think he would under other circumstances. Not that I'm saying this applies or doesn't apply. It's just something that I was thinking about during the scene. Obviously, Marcus doesn't know anything about any of that. Marcus probably doesn't even know about his cause. He thinks he's just a drug lord. Anyways. Yeah, Lord Harima. Either way, this is all horrifying. I don't have anything else to say about how messed up the scene is. Sorry, I was reading Savacom's manifesto there. The plight of the working people. No, don't apologize. I was just reading it. Slower than I normally do. So we find out the magical rune box, which they call a hex core. reacts to organic matter. It augments physiology. It extends reality. It might even cure you. And the moment he says that, the plant dies. Horribly, abruptly, and violently. Rejecting the transmutation. Little pro tip. You know, if somehow, mystically, magic suddenly exists tomorrow, and you see this magical box, which is like, feed me, Seymour. Don't. Jace, who is, of course, a horrible friend, is going to be there. He's going to help him solve this. He's going to figure this out. It's going to do this. And, Shadowrun. Hem. We see how much he's pushing for this. There's, it's called Frostborn. Yes! Sorry. And at this point, we cut down to Vi and Caitlyn, who are now down at the very, very, very bottom. One moment, please. Yeah, this is horrifying. The very, very, very bottom. All the way down here. Yeah, this is the actual dredge. The dumping ground of waste that dumped down into the lowlands, that dumped down into the Undercity, that dumped down to here. This is as far down as it gets that I'm aware of. Everything about this visually indicates that. In fact, we might even change playlists here. Let's see, do I have anything more appropriate to this? That'll do. Used to be smaller. And we see Huck down there, too. Nice place. Did you see their skin? Very, very stretched. You can't even see it because I'm actually reasonably healthy right now. But, like, you can see how their bones are sticking out from the back of their hands. Stuff like that. Fun little things. Vi continues to see powder as she drifts in and out of consciousness as she's dealing with some stuff. And there's this really unpleasant thing where Vi actually says, I shouldn't have left you, to Powder. But Caitlyn, of course, doesn't see Powder. How could she? So Caitlyn just says, it's okay, you have a good heart. Interesting little tidbit, and one of those accidental moments, which is probably going to make them be even closer to each other than they already were. Heimerdinger sees a vision too. He looks at the hex core, and what does he see? A mage. A mage nuke, to be more specific. It's more or less the exact same imagery from his memory of the Mage Wars. Nations destroyed by a single seed that looked exactly like this. Heimerdinger has been very hesitant and very, I don't mean this as an insult, conservative this entire time. But here we see him legitimately be afraid. This is actual fear, real fear at this point. And Jace is now, like, not saying anything. He doesn't care. He's not thinking about destroying these things. He's not thinking about the absolute destruction that can be unleashed by this stuff. All he's thinking about is Victor. And almost assuredly driven by at least a little bit of guilt. So now Heimerdinger and Jace are in competition, even though neither of them dislike each other. And both of them want what's best for as many people as possible, including Victor specifically. How's that for fun? So then we see the physical deformations of shimmer addiction, which makes sense given what we saw to Thugface back in the first 3 episodes. Why would you ever take something that has this kind of a side effect on you? Can I go ahead and admit something? I don't understand drug addiction, but I want to explain that slightly for just a second. Because there's believing something. You don't know it, you don't understand, you just believe it. And then over here, there's knowing something, where you have more intellectual understanding and comprehension of something. But then over here is understanding something. That can only come from personal experience, right? Very, very different lanes, these 3 things. A lot of people confuse them. So I don't understand addiction. I look at drug addiction and it's alien to me. And I feel like I'm grateful for that. Because I know drug addiction, intellectually. I've studied the chemical reactions it has in the brain and how it can adjust some of your own chemistry internally in such a way that tends to reinforce itself. A reinforcement loop, right? I get that. But, yeah, I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't do anything. But that's why I say I don't understand. I can't. I don't have that kind of personal reaction. I understand pain, but I do not understand drug addiction. And this is an interesting insight into this. The answer he gives is, I wanted to feel what other people feel. To be the one pushing someone around rather than being afraid. Which, Lord knows, Huck probably had at least a little bit of that, especially after Vander died. This is really, really horrible. I'm sorry, I don't have a nicer way to say this. This is exactly as, insert word to be workshopped, as it needs to be and as it should be. This is mature. This is serious. This is dark. It is horrible. Caitlyn trades away her gun just to get this potion. Did you notice there's actually something really smart from the alchemist? The potion was incomplete until the trade was, the barter was offered and the trade was accepted. That's not only a fascinating way to do business, but it also makes perfect sense. In almost all of alchemy, you make the actual, the overwhelming majority of the potion, which does nothing until you add the critical ingredient, right? And yeah, I also noticed that it was specifically the shimmer that was the final critical ingredient there. Once again, showcasing that shimmer can and does have medicinal properties as well. Oof. Everything about this scene is terrifying. Can I just say that? Oh yeah, I also noticed that Caitlyn removed the ammo, which is a very nice touch as well. I also love at how Caitlyn gives Huck a supportive hug, which is a damn shame. Because Caitlyn does that immediately after. Huck looks a little bit too longingly at the vial. And yeah, the really funny thing is this is the kind of stuff that Silco, on paper, should be completely against. Him and his big revolution, right? Everything he wants, everything he ever wanted. The equality, the uplifting, the possibilities and prosperity that the upper people endure. This is like, I think, our 15th bit of evidence so far that under Silco's reign, things have gotten a lot worse down below. It also helps to explain why Silco is such a diseased person. That there's something, once again, insane about him, disconnected about him, internally. I mean, I don't want to bring up the baptism thing again, but you saw how he used the baptism, right? Let go of that part of yourself and cling to the part of yourself that survives? I mean, Jesus Christ. Pun intended. So. There's this wonderful tidbit. Delusional. I like that, Eva. Silco is very delusional. There's this wonderful bit where Marcus is talking with Jace, and he says, since the Hex Gates, the fissures are just a lower priority. If that doesn't sound as insane to you as it does to me, can I just go ahead and say that I am a hopeless idealist when it comes to things like municipal affairs and matters of management governments? Because do you know what one of the biggest difficulties you face when you're in charge? It's not having enough resources to do the things you want to do. That's true at pretty much every level. If you're making just a silly little YouTube video about doing a rewrite of a Final Fantasy game, or if you're doing a project, or if you're trying to teach a bunch of students, or if you're trying to put together a car, or you're trying to build something, or whatever, right? Having to manage the limited resources you have is a huge part of what management means. It is, in fact, the definition of the word economics. So, they're bringing in a ludicrously additional amount of wealth and prestige to this city. And that helps solve that problem. It doesn't completely solve it, but you cannot tell me that all that influx of resources could not help the whole section, right? That could not help Zon, could not help the fissures. So why has the focus gone away from the fissures? Oh, I know the answer to that. You do too. I mean, have you seen the council? Maybe even just 1%, you know? I'm not asking you to turn away all your profit over to that. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. Do not get me started talking about the economics of the rich. I will go all the way down that rabbit hole. Silco is completely on top and has no idea what he's doing. Or just doesn't care. Or worse, is doing exactly what he thinks he should do. All of these are terrible, terrible options. It's funny because we've seen a lot of crime lords in fiction. We've seen crime lords like Fisk, who are very good at keeping things running. We see crime lords like the Joker, who are good at keeping things in line. And then we see Silco, who's just making it up as he goes. It's a fascinating take on that. And it's one of the reasons I keep pointing out that he's not really a crime lord this whole time. Because he's not. Yeah, sorry. Wilson Fisk, also known as the Kingpin. I apologize. I should have just called him Kingpin. Oh, I agree completely, Savacom. Great transition. Great transition here. From Jace to the council as a whole. Lovely sunset theme here going on. Hang on. I actually have a different song I want to pull up here. Give me 1 second, please. I think this will be appropriate. I can find it. Yeah, Silco has never had a strong grip on power. He's gotten extremely lucky. Really? So anyways. So we cut to the council meeting. Lovely sunset. Heimerdinger tries to give a speech to unite them. No action. No words, no nothing, just a speech. My favorite part is he seems so sincere in what he says. In fact, his overall speech is we need to go back to the old values. Did you catch that? And I know I come across as rather progressive, but the fact is the only thing he says in the speech is we should unite and we should go back to the old ways. That's it. If you dissect his speech, those are the only talking points he brings up. Nothing to actually convince, nothing to actually consider. So, not what you'd call super convincing under the best of circumstances. Never mind this nonsense. Then, everyone else just is kind of going with it, and Jace asks a wonderful question in response. This under their watch, the city has gone from bad to worse. What is your plan to fix this? Now, I want you to know, you know me in political intrigue, I was quite literally on the edge of my seat in this scene because I wanted to hear Heimerdinger's response to that question. What is your solution to this? What do we actually do? It's like that stupid freaking board meeting in Andor. Sorry, I'm stumbling over it because I'm trying not to give away spoilers. But you remember the one where, again, spoilers free zone here. You remember where the major, the other guy's like, yes, I want increased budget. Why? Oh, well, I want to increase surveillance. Which means what? To watch people more? Are you deliberately wasting my time? Like, he wants specifics. I want an answer to my question. What is your solution to this? How are you going to do this? What is your plan to fix this? Because Heimerdinger has offered nothing. Other than listening to the music and keeping his eyes closed. Unfortunately for us, or I guess just for me, Heimerdinger doesn't even respond to the question. Doesn't even acknowledge it. He just says, ha! Of course. He plays at rhetoric. He plays at rhetoric. Instead, he turns it right back around and attacks Jace's position by saying this is all about the fact that you just want to advance your hex tech thing. Which is kind of true, but also false, just like most rhetoric is. Because that... And so then Jace, who of course is not very good at politics, falls for the bait immediately and responds to the question at hand. We do not have centuries to live like you. We do not have the ability to just sit and wait. Hextech needs time, and it does, but humans don't live for centuries, and you can tell that all Jace is thinking about is Victor, who he clearly does care about, and is clearly very worried about. And you can just feel that this is the moment which Jace decides to go forward with what he's already positing. Like, he's obviously had this in mind, obviously. It has to be unanimous. I call for a vote of no confidence in Heimerdinger. We need to forcibly retire him out of the council. Heimerdinger's response to that says everything. He doesn't even say anything at first. He's just... like, there's this shock on his face. Can I just say, by the way, credit to them taking a character that looks a lot like a joke character and doing this kind of stuff with, like, his facial animation and with his characterization. That is just crazy good, how much stuff they do here. And yet everyone reacts to it. Everyone reacts to this. The harsh reality is, while people like Heimerdinger are actually a necessary and valuable component of this kind of political infrastructure and society as a whole, Jace is also right. They need to start shaking things up a little bit, even if they start making mistakes and failures, because the alternative is to just sit there, which is what they've been doing for years. We don't even know how long exactly. How long has this state of affairs been going on? At the very least, since when Vander and Silco decided to charge a bridge. Exactly, Bionic Punk. That's why this bothers me so much. Heimerdinger is 100% part of the problem, but he is only a part of the problem. His inclusion into helping solve the problem would be invaluable. He should be an ally. Yeah, this theme just keeps showing up. We just covered Clone Wars Season 7. We just covered Andor. This is just... Did you do it on purpose? Because you guys slotted the list. I didn't decide on these shows, remember? You did! Yeah, the scientist. We need his kind of scientific mind in order to figure out what's going on with this Hextech situation. In order to be careful and process about it. In order to be reasoned about it. In order to double-check them. We need that kind of person. He said it himself. We need a scientist in order to be looking into the Hextech situation. Remember him saying that? That's why he had endorsed Jace for becoming part of the counselors. So Jace, and he hesitates so hard. He is so unhappy about doing this. Mel is the first one to vote. Baldy goes second, Gears goes third, Corrupt goes fourth, Ladyface goes fifth. Jace himself is the one who goes last and hesitates the longest. Heimerdinger looks like he is on the verge of tears. Remember the name of this episode? The walls come tumbling down. What's funny is that obviously it has another meaning as well, which we'll get to in a minute, but it absolutely applies to this scene. I know everyone loves the flare scene, and I don't blame you for it, but this... So, we get a bit of a conflict build-up here. There's actually a really, really good scene that follows after this, like a really, really good scene. Which is funny, because we just left a really good scene. Caitlyn is trying to help Vi. The potion obviously helped. Thank goodness for that. Caitlyn is... There's actually this great back and forth, which does some quick and dirty character establishment. Caitlyn is weirded out here. I actually do think that narrows us. Caitlyn is weirded out here because she can't understand how you could be missing your sister. I mean, don't you have parents? It is, of course, Vi, who is the one who's like, well, yeah, no, they were killed by enforcers. Yeah, I saw that, ISD. Nevertheless, despite this particular back and forth, Vi clearly has more fondness and trust in Caitlyn than she's willing to go across here. And Caitlyn clearly cares enough about Vi to trade her frickin' gun, which says all it needs to. Yeah, Caitlyn... If Caitlyn said, what'd they do wrong? Oh, that would have been the end of that. And possibly her jaw. But then we see... Silco shows up. In person, because he still doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, shows up like freaking drug lord, dude. God, he's just playing. He's playing at it. He's got his vials, and he's got a couple of his enforcers, and he goes ahead, lets a couple of them have him so they can go and beat her up. And I love the tidbit where Vi is all prepped for the fight. But in the background, Caitlyn's been trying to knock out the support. And I love that because Vi has been paying attention enough, and, this is important, trusts Caitlyn enough to, without even looking, whirl around and give a lunging charge slam right into it, knocking over the whole structure. Now, Vi is pretty freaking strong, and we've seen this many times this whole show. But have you ever done an actual lunging punch? Because I have. This, like, I physically don't have enough room to demonstrate this, but if you actually throw yourself as hard as you can into a punch, there is so much more additional power that goes into that, because so much of your body weight and so much of your momentum is pushing this all into it. Oh yeah, and she also just took a hit of Shimmer. So, bam! And that sucker comes right down on their faces and just crushes them. Yeah, I was going to say, actually, Savacom could tell you a lot about these kind of things. Yeah, exactly, Lord Helmut. Either what's in front of your hand is breaking, or your hand is breaking. But one or another, with that kind of a punch, something is breaking. Silco, you know, it's... Yeah, the Eye of Zon goes down. Powder decides to set off the flare. Wonderful symmetry and symbology of her and her family holding up the flare with her. Probably some of the last vestiges of powder inside that head right there. Vi survives with Caitlyn's help. Did you catch that? As this wonderful song is playing, there's a lot of jump cutting. A lot is happening in a very short period of time. But Vi is actually pulled up by Caitlyn, which is a minor thing, but it is then immediately juxtaposed, less than a second later, with Silco smashing himself out of the rubble by himself. It then cuts to Caitlyn and Vi going through the rest of the town, quick side thing, getting the bullets ready, getting ready to go forward. And it cuts back to Silco, who has actually lost it, and for one of the first times, has just actually lost all composure. We don't hear him, but he is ranting and screaming, and he walks up to one of the druggies and just starts stomping on his face, probably killing him. Just bashing one of his own drug-addicted victims out of just a sheer temper tantrum rage. And of course, Silco does all of this completely by himself. Yeah, he literally unbalances himself by how hard he's doing it. Yeah, no kidding, 040. Jesus Christ. Yeah, Jinx learned this from somewhere, which I'll get back to that in just a second. Because then... Well, before we cut to the actual final battle, we have two other little trauma points to hit here. First, we have Enforcers on the bridge. Again. Yeah, I don't think I didn't notice that. And second, we see a bit with Victor, young Victor. Rio will live. I have to keep the mutation alive. Doodle doodle doodle. Now I understand. Yay. This then cuts to Silco, who's just frustrated and pissed and can barely contain himself. How many problems can one girl cause? And then he looks up and he sees Twitface strung up by Jinx. Then we cut to the final battle. Powder in frustration throws the flare away. And I gotta be honest, for like 5 seconds, I was really worried that Vi wouldn't come and that would be the trauma, right? Missed him by 3 seconds, I think is the name of the trope. Nope. Instead, Vi does actually show up, and the two hug, and she's actually there. Powder actually asks, "Are you real?" Which is such a valid and truthful statement that Vi completely skips over because Vi has no idea what's coming from that. Tying into what Savacom mentioned earlier, at this point, Jinx is so completely and functionally broken. Vi has had to endure hard times, but she came out of it from the better of herself. Like, she's just whatever about all this, honestly. 6 years in prison? Okay, next. But Jinx? Jinx did not come out of this with the best of herself. And you remember what I mentioned about how at least the hallucinations haven't been talking back to her before? Well, now the hallucinations are talking back. There's this wonderful bit where she's trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and she actually says, I wrote this down word for word, "Everyone shut up, I need to think." Nobody was talking in that scene. And you can tell that her brain is just completely fracturing at this point, that she cannot process this, or is refusing to process this, or probably both. And this might have actually worked out if not for the fact that Caitlyn then showed up immediately after this. And that's... Like, I like Caitlyn a lot, actually. I cannot believe how much Caitlyn has gone from such a background character just to one of my favorite characters on this show. But, yeah, an Enforcer shows up. And I'm just scared about that going bad. And then they didn't. Like, twice now. Twice they have not gone the route I was worried about them going, and instead did something much more interesting. Because then the Firelighters show up. Okay, I'm with that. So we have a color-coded firefight. Dark blue, light blue, violet, and green. There's some really good action here. Like, some really, really good action. As usual, I feel silly about mentioning how good this is, but I have to give special praise to one specific thing. There's this one shot. So we have a nice big close-up shot, right? Right up here. And she's got this freaking Gatling gun, and she's trading it around. But then the camera goes way out here, and the fight is like up here now, right? And you can see the tracer shells going off like this. But then one of the tracers goes like this way, and then like right at the camera like this, and then this way. It's a trick that fiction doesn't pull very often. In fact, it's so weird that I actually thought I watched it. I had to rewind and rewatch it for just a second to verify that they were actually going for that kind of a shot. It's a way to try and keep things personal and distant at the same time so that the brain can process things personally as well as understand what's going on distantly. I know that sounds weird, but let me explain that a little bit. When you have a fight scene, you have two general options. You can have the camera up close so that we can see all the action, and then we can enjoy and process all the action. Or you can have the camera far out so we can see all of the individual things that are happening around the action, so we can process the full depth and complexity of the fight. Or you can do an overly chopped, edited mess, which is just trash, and then there's this for some stupid reason. But I was talking about good cinematography. Trying to juxtapose the two across each other like that was an interesting choice. It's very minor, but I had to comment on it. The name of this song is Music Madness from Donkey Kong Country Returns, Lord Aramont. Several times in this fight, Vi sees something in Jinx, and this ties into something that was said earlier. Things changed when you left. I changed. Now, Vi takes that in completely the wrong direction, I think. We don't really see... I think I agree with you, ISD. We don't really see exactly what Vi's reaction to it is yet, because this is the end of the episode. But there is the implication that, you know, she's just saying, oh, no, it's fine. You did what you had to do. It's fine. But now we can go back to the way things were. Oh, that sounds familiar. I'm not sure how much of that's on purpose, but the relation between Vi and Heimerdinger is very interesting here. Because in both cases, they're well-meaning people who want to help, who just kind of want to go back to the way things were back when things were better. And neither of them have any real idea of how bad things have gotten. In Heimerdinger's case, it's represented by the entire city, but in Vi's case, it's represented by Jinx, who is just a worse person. And this is what Vi starts to see as she's watching the fight progress. Exactly, Trihexia. And I'm not blaming Vi here, just like I wasn't really blaming Heimerdinger. It's just different mentalities, right? Different perspectives. Vi just wants to take care of her frickin' sister. But when she sees that person, she sees Jinx. She sees someone who enjoys the violence. She sees someone who's getting into it. That kind of detached, diseased grin as she's shooting at people. There's several specific shots, and they do a very, very good job of showcasing that it looks like she's trying to murder people. How often has Vi tried to murder someone this whole time? Even when she's fighting, she takes it seriously. But she doesn't enjoy it. We've seen Vi in a few fights, too. Yeah, no, Vi is actually much more the Batman here. I enjoy hitting stuff. But yeah, exactly, Savicom. Stuff! Like, she beats the snot out of that machine, the punch-out machine. She could probably do it blindfolded. But if that was a person, she'd only do that if she had to, which she has. A few times. But even when she was going after Twitface, yeah, she wasn't trying to murder her. Probably could have. Like, she had the drop on her. If she wanted to kill her, she could have. And she sees something disturbing in Jinx. What she is. And then the Firelighters knock Vi out, get her, grab her, escape, and we have just a moment for Jinx to realize that she's alone again before cut to credits. Yeah, and there's that trauma all over again. Ain't that great? Hey, you got your sister back and she's gone. Cool. It's gonna be a long week, I'll tell you what. I gotta cover Mandalorian next. I don't disagree with you, Savicom. I think you're arguing too hard for the other side because you think no one else is advocating for it. But to be clear, I am actually on your side when it comes to Jinx, for lack of a better way to put that. You know me, I believe in free will, just as a concept. And so I think that, no, I am not Bionic Punk. I think that, you know, we decide. We can be victims, and I don't want to victim shame. That's ridiculous. Nobody wants to victim shame. Jinx has gone through some horrible, horrible things, but she ultimately is the one who decides. Everything else is pressure. Now, Silco, screw him. That's... Ooh. I agree with Purple. In addition to the obvious fact that this is a culmination episode, which just tends to hit harder than a lot of other episodes, the fact remains, this is poetry in motion. Ironically, as much as everyone absolutely praises the flare scene, and I agree with that, I think it was actually the council scene that really pushed it over for me. Yeah, I know, boring lore, I get it. But seriously though, there's so much good stuff here. There's so much good stuff here. I don't even know where to summarize it. Probably Bionic Punk. Probably. Put that in there. I do like real drama. I always have. There's a specific reason why that negative category is referred to as fake drama. Real drama? That's good stuff. The flare scene, you notice also the council scene is immediately followed by the flare scene, so that's some good 1-2 punch right there. So, well, I mean, Twitface has been pretty unnecessarily sadistic and unpleasant this entire time, Trahexy, which is why I continue to not reward her with a name. Just like Stalker Guy. But, points if you get it. For those of you not aware of our schedule, so obviously we won't be covering anything else today. I do have some paperwork to cover up on tomorrow, starting at roughly 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be starting The Mandalorian. We're going through Season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, not 3. And that's probably going to be pretty much the entire next week, is just going to be covering The Mandalorian. We will come back to Arcane as of next Saturday. The odds of us finishing Arcane next Saturday are near 100%, I would say at this point. I would be shocked if we don't end up wrapping up Arcane a week from today. Why not 3? What, Loke? Oh, because it wasn't funded. Obviously. Remember, you guys decided this stuff, not me. So yeah, we'll be doing Mandalorian Season 1 through 2. For those of you not aware, immediately after that, we'll be doing Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Probably the only show on this list that I am almost guaranteed to not like. I don't know how it'll review, but I probably won't like it. And then we will have the best show ever made, the Donkey Kong Country Show.